Right, welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. As usual, we will be discussing an Arab fight. Today we'll be speaking about two Arab fights. On Thursday, Egypt and Sudan emphasized in a joint press release that their commitment to the path agreed upon the U.S. brokered negotiations on the filling and operating of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. This definitely came after a meeting held in Khartoum between Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok, Sudanese Irrigation Minister Yasser Abbas, Egyptian Intelligence Chief Abbas Kamel, and Egyptian Irrigation Minister Mohammed Abdelati. Let's watch Egypt and Sudan and their commitment to the filling and operating of the Grand Renaissance Dam according to the U.S. track. Let's watch first the report.
In a joint press release, Egypt and Sudan emphasized their commitment to the path agreed upon in the U.S. brokered negotiations on the filling and operation of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. State news agency MENA also said that the two sides were committed to the terms of reference of the deal of those negotiations brokered. The joint Egyptian-Sudanese press release came after a meeting held in Khartoum on Thursday between Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok, Sudanese Irrigation Minister Yasser Abbas, Intelligence Chief Abbas Kamel, and Egyptian Irrigation Minister Mohammed Abdelati. The officials discussed ways of boosting bilateral relations and the development in the GERD issue. Both countries reiterated their adherence to the Declaration of Principles signed by Cairo, Khartoum, and Addis Ababa in 2015. The Thursday meeting marks a new convergence between the two countries after Sudan had previously declined to endorse a draft resolution proposed by Egypt to the Arab League on the Ethiopian Dam. Following the Arab League motion, Sudanese Sovereignty Council member Sadiq Tower said that he believed his country's stance on the Ethiopian mega dam had been misunderstood and that Khartoum had sought to take into account the interests of Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan when dealing with the issue. Tensions have been building between Egypt and Ethiopia over the technical details regarding the operation and filling of the dam. Ethiopia hopes that the massive $4.8 billion American project on the Blue Nile will allow it to become Africa's largest power exporter. Egypt, which is downstream from the dam, fears that the project will diminish its share of the Nile water, in which it's almost entirely reliant for its fresh water.
Right, welcome back, and to highlight this issue we have with us over the phone Dr. Khaled AbuZeid, International Water Expert and Regional Director of CEDAR. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Khaled. I guess we will be back to Dr. Khaled. Definitely Egypt and Sudan have both reiterated their adherence to the Declaration of Principles as well as the U.S. track in which it ended with no concrete result from the Ethiopian side. Dr. Khaled?
Yes, hello.
Yes, good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for being with us over the phone.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. And just on Thursday, Egypt and Sudan emphasized in a joint press release the commitment to the path agreed upon in the U.S. brokered negotiations on the filling and operating of the Grand Renaissance Dam. Dr. Khaled, how far do you think the U.S. negotiations ended in the supposedly positive way for all sides, and how do you view its track so far?
Well, the mediation of the U.S. and the World Bank was an important step where a draft of the anticipated agreement was put in place, and it should have taken into consideration the views of the three countries, final drafting was just done by the US and the World Bank. The articles, but the main points of these agreements have been negotiated for over 2 or 3 months between the 3 countries in Washington, and the last meeting, of course, was not attended by Ethiopia, which is a pity, but we can see that Sudan and Egypt are committed to this path. Ethiopia has indicated maybe a couple of contradicting opinions. They first said that they need some time, then they started criticizing the role of the US and the World Bank, although the US was just indicating what has been previously mentioned in the 2015 Declaration of Principles, which says that no filling or operation before an agreement is reached.
And so, and with no harm to any of the parties.
Exactly, it indicates that there should be no significant harm. There should be agreement on the rules of filling, or the first filling. So this means that before the first filling happens, an agreement should be in place on the rules and guidelines for this first filling. So the 3 countries signed this Declaration of Principles. So if any filling starts before this agreement is reached, that's breaching this Declaration of Principles. And if the US is reiterating what's mentioned in the Declaration of Principles, this doesn't mean that it's interfering in the affairs of the 3 countries. It is just reiterating what the 3 countries have agreed upon. So this facilitation of the US and the World Bank should be looked at in a positive manner. This is not just the result of a negotiation over these 2 months, but it's over 5 years, if not 9 years, since the initiation and the launching of the construction of the dam in 2011. So I think that this should be looked at positively, and the 3 countries should look at this step as a way forward. And we hope that Ethiopia comes back and signs, actually, this agreement, because it is a result of their involvement in these discussions for a long time.
Dr. Khaled, when we speak about demands requested by Egypt and Sudan, we're speaking about what exactly is Egypt and Sudan? What are they calling for, or what are their submission or their ideas towards this proposed agreement, and how far do you think they are fair enough for all the 3 parties?
Well, from what we hear, that is supposed to have taken into consideration, of course, all the views of the 3 countries. No country would reach 100% of what they had anticipated for or what they had aspired for. This is the whole idea of the negotiations, that some countries take part of that, what they want, and they give in to other parties for some issues.
No, I'm really speaking about what is Egypt demanding. What are the demands of Egypt?
Well, I think that Ethiopia signs the agreement that has been drafted.
Yes, definitely. What does Egypt demand in this agreement? What are the demands of Egypt? Yeah. Because they have been always some thoughts that Egypt wants the lion's share, that Egypt is putting very very harsh and strict articles to the agreement. What exactly is Egypt demanding, Dr. Khaled?
Well, of course, I can't really tell what is specifically indicated in the agreement because I didn't look at it. But the whole idea is that Egypt, first of all, is not using the whole lion's share that like what is being wrongfully said. But Egypt is only using 55.5 billion cubic meters per year out of and a total amount of 1,660 billion cubic meters per year that falls as rainfall over the whole basin. Ethiopia only in the Nile basin itself receives about 450 billion cubic meters per year of rainfall.
No, can we just repeat the numbers, please? So Egypt is having 55.5 billion cubic meters out of 1,660
billion cubic meters per year of rainfall over the whole Nile basin.
Right.
Ethiopia only receives within the Nile basin 450 billion cubic meters per year of rainfall. Of course, some of it goes through the Blue Nile, which is only 50 billion cubic meters that goes through the Blue Nile, and maybe about 12 through the Adbara and 12 through the Sobat River. But the rest is within the country. The rest of the 450 billion cubic meters per year of rainfall, and that's in average. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's a little bit less. Where is this all this water? It is supplementing the groundwater where they could be abstracted for any use. It is actually contributing to rain-fed agriculture, which is feeding the whole country of Ethiopia because they are dependent on rain-fed agriculture. They don't have to have specifically irrigated agriculture from the river because they have rain-fed agriculture. So some countries depend on rain-fed agriculture where rainfall is, like Ethiopia. And some other countries downstream which don't have rain, like Egypt, depends on the little water that comes through the river itself. And on top of that, they could make use of that water also that's flowing out of the country through hydropower generation, like this dam is doing. But on top of this, even 450 billion, Ethiopia has other river basins that receives other rainfall. In total, Ethiopia receives 970 billion cubic meters per year of rainfall. Ethiopia is the largest livestock country production in the whole continent of Africa. So they depend on natural pasture and grazing lands that is fed from rainfall. And they export meat, and they are they're a big country with livestock production. And all this depends on waters within the Nile basin from the water that falls on the Nile basin. So they are actually using water from the Nile basin.
Right.
So any agreement, I mean, the three countries have to really know that any existing use from the Nile waters have to be maintained because they are providing for the livelihoods of the three countries. Some countries, it is providing the livelihood through rainfall directly, and some others are provided through the water that goes through the river from that rainfall as well. So, I mean, if a country is trying to jeopardize or trying to affect existing uses, that will be, I don't think that will be accepted by any country.
Dr. Khaled, if I may ask you here, we are aware that there is an international law that is really conducting the international waters and rivers. We're speaking here about the Nile rivers in which there are the upstream countries, the downstream countries. It is a shared river among 9 countries. we speak about the Nile rivers, are we speaking about this international laws that apply on such a river, and how far is Egypt's demands are legal according to this law?
Yes. Well, the law, the international law, is actually a group of principles and rules and laws. The latest of them is what is called the 1997 UN Convention on Non-Navigational Uses of International Water Courses. And this actually convention combines a lot of these rules and laws. But there is also the Helsinki rules, which is also indicating a lot of other principles as well. But in general, these laws and principles, they protect the existing uses of any country. They protect what is called no significant harm, or in some other laws like the Helsinki rules, it says no appreciable harm even. And also the principle of equitable utilization. And here, equitable utilization of the waters of an international river basin or river doesn't necessarily mean equal amounts of water, but there are many factors under these principles of equitable utilization. Generating hydropower is an actual utilization of the water. It doesn't have to be a consumptive use. It could be non-consumptive use, such as the generation of hydropower. And it depends also on the level of dependency of the country on that international river or international drainage basin. So in a country like Egypt, it depends like almost 100% on the waters of the Nile River. But in a country like Ethiopia, it has 12 other river basins. It has rainfall, where it can be using or utilizing directly in grain-fed agriculture and livestock grazing and others. So the level of dependency is very important. And here we see that the level of dependency for Egypt is almost 100%. It has been also using this water for thousands of years, and this also gives Egypt an acquired right to this water.
Right.
Not to mention that there is an agreement also between Egypt and Sudan indicating the actual amount that Egypt is entitled to, even if Ethiopia is not part of that agreement between Egypt and Sudan.
Yes.
But it documents the amount of water that Egypt has been using since then, and even before then, and until now, and that it is fully utilizing this amount of water for a long period of time. So it acquired even a right to this water. So if another country wants to use waters from the river basin, it has to make sure that it doesn't affect that water, or it could work on developing additional water resources within the basin, and then they could agree on how to utilize that water or generate a new use like the hydropower generation, but also without affecting other countries.
Right. Dr. Khaled AbuZeid, International Water Expert and Regional Director of CEDAR, we thank you so much for being with us.